The loss of the Aikoku Maru on the first day of Operation Hailstone in Truk lagoon is still steeped in controversy. So what caused the vessel to explode? Was it a torpedo, or a bomb, or perhaps an out-of-control aircraft that collided with the ship? The Japanese version differs from the American series of events. Even the American pilots, representing their various carriers, disagree. Compounding the mystery is the loss of a single aircraft, a Grumman TBF Avenger and her 3 crew.
It's a 20-minute run out to the site of the 4th Fleet anchorage, where the wreck of the Aikoku Maru stands as the epitome of the carnage and death generated by Operation Hailstone. The Aikoku Maru was built to carry passengers and cargo, but in 1941 the newly launched ship was quickly modified and thrust into World War II. Aikoku's new role as a raider saw her involved in the sinking of a number of ships and the capture of others, amongst them the nearby wreck of the Aikoku Maru. In 1942, the Aikoku was again refitted, this time to a transport and submarine replenishment role. She arrived in Truk on the night of February 16, carrying a large contingent of Rikusentai, Japanese Marines, who were being transported to the Marshall Islands.
The Aikoku's arrival in the lagoon was a stroke of bad luck and timing. Just hours after she dropped anchor, at sunrise the next morning, the US Navy begins Operation Hailstone. At 7:45 a.m. on February the 17th, 1944, a TBF 1C Grumman Avenger took off the flight deck of the USS Intrepid. The pilot was 25-year-old Lieutenant James Edwin Bridges from Georgia. The other crew were radio operator Robert Ellis Brunton, 24, from North Carolina, and James Albert Green, 23, rear gunner from Illinois. They were part of a strike force consisting of 8 Avengers, 12 SBDs and 12 Hellcats in support. By the time Bridges' squadron arrives in the lagoon, ships were already burning from the earlier onslaught by the US Navy. The bomber's role in this mission was to concentrate solely on shipping. However, when reaching the area, the strike commander ordered the SBDs to attack the seaplane base on Dublin. Seen here in this recent footage. The aircraft from the USS Intrepid joined the other team from the USS Essex attacking the shipping. At approximately 8:20, Aikoku Maru suffered a minor hit from an Essex plane. Smoke can be seen along her starboard side. In the wake of that attack, the plane flown by Bridges began a dive towards the Aikoku Maru. Seen here, circled in this picture. Just moments later, this. The official US Navy report stated 6 witnesses saw the plane fall into the sea as a result of the explosion. However, the Japanese version was different. The seaplane tender, the Akitsushima, was anchored 2 miles to the north of the Aikoku. Seen here in this picture, she had also suffered damage but would survive the attack. A crewman from her stated he saw the plane crash into the bridge and the burning wreck dropped into the hull below, thus setting off the explosion.
Our first view of the ship is the utter devastation caused by the blast. The direct hit on her cargo of munitions obliterated the entire area just forward of where the funnel used to stand. The promenade deck simply ends. In its place, twisted and tortured metal and debris. The death toll is unclear and varies according to the report. But aboard the Aikoku, something like 700 men perished, her numbers swelled by the temporary presence of the Marines. Approximately 20 men stationed at the stern survived the explosion.
I saw a column of water go up. That instant, we were blown away from the ship, about 10 meters. It was only then that I saw clearly Aikoku Maru, broken in half, sinking into the ocean. It was a sea of blood. My friend who came with me from Oi Flying Corps also got hit, and half his body below the neck was obliterated. It was a terrible sight. There were people without arms, without heads, without legs.
These former first-class cabins are in danger of collapse. Only the adjacent sinks indicate where the walls once stood. This corridor would have been crowded with scores of Marines watching the attacking aircraft and the nearby burning ships, no doubt fearful of their own imminent demise. They didn't have long to wait. Moving aft, we pass a rear hold and a storeroom. In the distance is the rear island deckhouse. Mounted on the rear deck, an artillery gun is the dominating feature of the stern. It still points skyward, a clear indicator of its use up until the final seconds. An elevated view of the stern shows one of the Aikoku's docking catwalks. The wooden floor and handrails have long since disappeared, leaving the colourful framework. The other catwalk runs at 90 degrees out to the edge of the ship's cruiser's stern. The sandy floor is clearly visible at a depth of 63 metres. Moving back along the walkway reveals a treasure at the other end. The docking helm, with the speaking tube still attached, cloaked in stunning colour. The starboard engine telegraph sits to the side. The port side telegraph is missing. Underneath the stern, the twin propellers are nearly buried in the sand. Also typical are the sake and beer bottles that litter the floor of this storage room. The wreck is a major grave site. In 1969, the Cousteau Society filmed the remains of many of the men.
In 1980, the first of many attempts to remove the remains began on this vessel and others. They have continued to as late as 2024.
Throughout the sunken ships are hundreds and hundreds of skeletons, the remains of men who were killed outright in battle or were trapped below sinking decks and drowned.
Other wars in other places and the passage of so much time have softened the memories of all those who died in World War II. But this Shinto ceremony on this tiny Pacific island reaffirms the truth that those memories are not gone altogether. Just as we in America have not and will not forget our dead of Pearl Harbor, or Normandy, or Iwo Jima, the fallen Japanese of Truk Lagoon also have not faded into anonymity. And so many years later, still they are mourned.
In repeated pilgrimages, family and friends of the dead travel from Japan for memorial services held at water's edge, as close as they can be to their lost loved ones. It is the Japanese belief that the spirits of warriors who died away from home cannot achieve eternal rest until their mortal remains are returned to Japan. In a sense, then, peace still eludes Truk's victims of war. Some of the fallen warriors now have had their long underwater interment brought to an end. Divers from the Japanese Ministry of Health and Welfare have carefully retrieved many remains from the Aikoku Maru and 5 other ships. After the existence of the scattered bones was publicized in Japan, there was public pressure, particularly from the families of men who died at Truk, to begin the recovery. Despite the loss of the war, the Japanese, especially the older Japanese, feel as much reverence for their dead servicemen as we Americans feel for ours.
Most of these remains were found here, in the rear hold, between decks, which had been made into temporary accommodation for the Japanese Marines.
The ships of the lagoon yielded the skeletal remains of more than 400 men. Their cremation on the site of an old Japanese airbase climaxed several emotional weeks of sifting through the long-forgotten residue of war. All of the ashes were carried to Japan for interment in the National Cemetery for the War Dead, their promise of eternal rest finally fulfilled.
This monument was placed on the wreck in 1994 in honour of the 50th anniversary. The wreck of the Aikoku Maru is one of the lagoon's most exciting dives. Part of her attraction is the stark contrast at either end. While the magnificent stern sits largely intact, forward of the funnel is just utter destruction.
For years, divers have had the choice of visiting approximately a dozen Japanese plane wrecks in the lagoon. However, a team from Project Recover visited Truk in 2019 and found the remains of 3 US aircraft. Their mission is to locate and repatriate Americans missing in action from previous wars. These were the first US planes that had ever been found in the lagoon. They were 2 Douglas SPD Dauntlesses and 1 Avenger. all were badly damaged. The Avenger was found 600 metres away from the wreck of the Aikoku. No serial number was discovered. So whether this is Bridges' aircraft or not is yet to be confirmed. Certainly the short distance from the plane to the shipwreck points to this being the grave of the 3 missing crew. None of the Avengers from the USS Intrepid were armed with torpedoes. The likely cause of the sinking is the bomb dropped by Bridges detonated munitions with disastrous consequences for so many.
The Aikoku Maru never fulfilled the future her builders intended. No streamers fell on this promenade deck. There were no scenes of excited passengers hurrying up this gangway or waving to those left on the shore. Just nervous young men on their way to battle. A campaign from which most would never return.